to tomorrow and Friday at 6:50.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me just,
Okay, I'll wait.
yeah, no, I'm just about to start a town Zoom call. So, okay, tell me which date you wanted again?
Thursday?
Alexa, go off. Is there a way to pause?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Barbara. We're just going to wait a couple more minutes because I know that there's some people that are going to be signing on, and so give them a couple more minutes. Hi, Doug.
Hey, Julia.
How are you?
Very well, very well. How are you?
Good. So you get a couple more minutes, Marissa, because I'm just going to wait to see if more people sign on. Because I have 20 people registered for this, so we have some.
Yay.
We have some people missing.
Yay. I'm excited.
Now, did you all get the PDF with the ingredients list? Hopefully you got the email from me when you registered. Barbara, you didn't get that?
I didn't register.
Oh, okay. So what you can do is send me an email to my town email. Do you have that? Okay, it was on the original Zoom link. So it's J Weisenberg, JWEISENBERG at shelterislandtown.us. And what I'll do is I'll send you the recipe ingredients that she'll be talking about tonight. This
Okay.
call is also going to be recorded. So you will all get
Awesome.
a recording of it if you forget what she says. You'll be able to watch it again.
I'll be back. I just need to refresh my beverage.
I like it.
All right, I see Valerie.
My poor dogs are outside in the rain because I'm like, you cannot be in here right now. You're gonna have to deal with it.
They're gonna smell the venison in a moment.
Yeah.
And I see we have a nice view of Doug's buck in the back there.
I saw that. Yeah.
Nice mount there. That's awesome.
I don't have anything good deer related in my kitchen. It's all in my living room.
There's Lauren. Hi.
I'm sending you an email now.
Okay, great. Thanks, Barbara. Janine. Hi, Janine. Hi, Harriet. You got on. Great. I'm so glad you made it. All right, everybody. I think I'm going to get started, and I assume that people are just going to hop on as they figure out Zoom. Although by now with the pandemic, we're all like zoomed out, right? All right, so I really appreciate that everybody expressed an interest and that you all registered and signed on tonight. We actually had 20 people register, so I imagine others are going to be hopping on. So let me start by saying who I am. So I am Julia Weisenberg. I'm a resident of Shelter Island. I live here year round. I'm a mom. I have 2 kids in Shelter Island School District. I'm a hunter. So I also hunt. I am a recreational hunter and a nuisance hunter for the town of Shelter Island. And I'm a member of the Deer and Tick Town Committee. So I'm one of 7 members on our committee. And part of our subdivision, we have a subcommittee on education. And one of the things that we came up with this year is that we wanted to just make people more aware of our venison donation program, which is pretty robust. I'm going to give you some statistics that are probably going to blow your mind. But part of the Deer and Tick Committee's mission is, of course, to continue educating people on how to prevent tick bites. And the second thing is that we engage in still managing our deer herd culling. So we have recreational hunters and we have nuisance hunters and nuisance wildlife control officers that hunt basically 6 to 7 months of the year. And we work on trying to keep the number of deers in balance, because science has shown that where there's more deer, there's more ticks. So that's also part of our mission. And this year we're looking at sort of more creative contemporary ways to sort of figure out how we disseminate information to the public, both on trying to promote our hunting and also trying to keep people educated, again, like I said before, about tick bites. Because this is the time of year, by the way, everyone wants to go out, as I'm sure you guys all are. You're going out on our wonderful town properties and hiking Mashamik and other properties, and you have to be vigilant. This is a time when the tick cycle is most active. All right. The other thing I wanted to say is that I am one of 7 members, and we're all like really nice people. So that's the first thing I want to say. You can attend any of the Deer and Tick Committee meetings. They're all on Zoom. So if you just type in on your browser, Town of Shelter Island, you'll come and see all the committees that the Town of Shelter Island has, and you'll find us, Deer and Tick. And we meet about 6 times per year, sometimes more if we feel the need, but it's always welcome to the public. And just so you know, we evaluate ourselves in terms of how we're doing in our tick management plan and deer management plan by using statistics and science. So we're not just going willy-nilly, we check ourselves along the way to see how we're doing. And right now we're doing an excellent job. Here's the statistic I promised you. So it's a little dated, so this is a month old, and obviously we have harvested more deer through the month of March, but we donated to our venison program 2,060 pounds of venison, okay, since the beginning of the season, which started October 1st. Now, that number is going to rise up, and we're actually pretty much in line with what we did last year. So we're on track to do the same as we did last year. So here's the thing, we're not necessarily a food pantry, but we do not charge for any of this venison. It's free to the public. It's free to anyone in need. I recently, someone from the public contacted me and said, you know, if somebody is in need, can they avail themselves of that? Definitely. And the program's going to continue to be free. So if you've ever been down to the town center where you throw out your garbage, all your recyclables and so forth, if you go to the little part that has where you put your aluminum cans, like your tin cans, look behind there. You're going to see like a little white building. If you go in there, to the left and in the back is a huge fridge, and it's stocked with venison. And actually, Bay Constable Bo Payne just restocked the fridge yesterday. So some of the cuts and some of the things that our chef is going to be talking about tonight, you can go down to the town center tomorrow and try to look for that cut of meat. All the meat is labeled nicely. It shows the cut, the date. It's done by a butcher that we hire from the town. And all that's going to be stocked, and it's stocked I'd say every week or so, especially during this time right now. All right. The other thing I wanted to say is that at the end of the seminar, I will post Bo Payne's email. I have a little slide. If you would like to get on Bo Payne's text blast, like he basically does an email blast, where he lets you know when the fridge is stocked, you can request to be on that list. Okay. So that kind of helps you like know when it's there, so you don't drive down and it's empty. Okay. So again, I hope that this will be the first of many really fun educational calls that the Deer and Tick Committee will do to kind of make you feel more in tune with our mission and what we're doing, and that we be open and talk to each other and just basically try to keep Shelter Island healthy and keep nature in balance with us. All right, so I'm going to shut up now, and I'm going to turn it over to Marissa Estatio. Let me just tell you a little bit quickly about Marissa. So Marissa is a real estate agent. She lives in Suffolk County, just like us. She is also my co-founder, along with Jackie Molina, of an all-female hunting and angling organization on Long Island called Long Island Babes and Bucks. And I'm really proud of her. I'm really privileged to have her on this call. She's doing this call for free, giving her time for a good cause. And she's also a pretty good chef. So rather than have me try to botch something and finagle something, I'm going to let her do it. You can also contact her after the call if you have any questions about what she shows you. All of you should have received a PDF from me in which I included her email, so you can feel free to reach out to her then. But it's really nice to have somebody who not only harvests her own deer, but then she knows how to prepare it for you. So hopefully she'll give you a lot of good tips. The other thing I just wanted to make a plug for the Deer and Tick Committee again is that if anybody is interested in becoming a recreational hunter, or possibly having your property on Shelter Island evaluated to see if it could become a hunting property, we would really appreciate that. And you can always, if that's something you're considering, you can reach out to Bo Payne again on that matter. All right, Marissa, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Great. Hi, everybody. Just want to Am I going?
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Okay. I just want to start by saying thank you. I am honored that you asked me to do this. It's something I'm very passionate about. Hunting, cooking. I mean, it's like my two favorite things. I'm so happy to be here and be doing this. Another big thing I want to say is what Shelter Island does with giving all that meat away for free. You're basically putting, you know, filet mignon and beef stock and all this great meat available for people that you know, would normally have to spend a lot of money on in a grocery store. So it's amazing what you guys are doing. And everybody that's here in the Zoom call, you're very intelligent for taking advantage of it. So I wanted to start off by just showing you the different kinds of cuts. So I didn't want to use a backstrap because I know a lot of people, probably you don't have the backstrap available to you. Those are kind of taken out of the freezer first. This recipe that I'm using, I wanted to do a very simple, basic recipe to start with, and hopefully it'll be one of many that we're going to be doing. But I normally do this with backstrap or loin. But I wanted to do something a little different for you guys. So I took out what I label as London broil. So the London broil that I label as London broil is it's part of the back hind. So your cut that you're looking at, that you're getting, it's pretty big. It's about you can tell it's not a backstrap. It's much larger than a backstrap, but it looks very similar to a backstrap. As you guys, I put it on a plate. I don't know if you guys can see. So this cut, I already cut it in half, but you can see it's about like 2.5 inches thick. And you can tell inside of it, because I cut it already, it doesn't have a lot of, it doesn't have any silver skin, and there's really no fat inside of it. So this is also a very good cut to use as a steak. You can use this for anything that you would use a normal steak from a cow at the grocery store. So I wanted to do this for you guys so that you can see that you can use this as well. So like I said, I already cut it in half. So it's easier to cook, and it's, you know, it cooks faster. But this recipe is extremely simple. It is just a rub, and you just pop it in the oven. There's barely any cleanup, barely any prep. This is one of my favorite meals to make when I'm like last minute. I've been working outside all day. I don't feel like, you know, spending an hour in the kitchen. You literally just put the rub on, stick it in the oven for 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how thick the cut is and what cut you're using. And then it's done. So I already mixed together all of my spices. So what it has in it is salt, pepper. It has cumin, thyme, garlic powder, and paprika. And then I'm going to mix that with coffee grinds and sugar. So if anybody's looking at the recipe that we sent, it says like Wesley coffee and sugar. It doesn't matter. That's just probably who originally made the recipe. You can use, I've used decaf coffee. I've used regular coffee. You can use instant coffee, whatever kind of coffee you have in your cabinet, it doesn't matter. So I mixed that all together. And then what I started doing when I originally was using this recipe, I would coat the meat with olive oil. That's normally what you do when you're putting a rub on something. But I started using mustard instead, because mustard pairs very well with gamey meat. I started using mustard type, like dressings, I guess you would say, when I was cooking with a lot of pork, and especially with lamb. So I started using all of my lamb marinades and rubs with the venison, and I found that it is amazing. I mean, it knocks the lamb out of the park. Anything that I've ever used for lamb, I use for venison, and it is just a done deal. I love it, and I would never change it. So maybe, hopefully, I'll be doing something else in the future with the marinade that I use with the mustard. But you can, you're gonna put a little bit of olive oil in here just so that it's easier to mix together. So what I'm basically doing is I'm putting a little more moisture into the rub that I just put together. So you can put about a tablespoon of olive oil into the dry ingredients that you mix together. You literally take everything on that list, just mix it together in a bowl. It's so easy. So I'm just gonna put all this together. Now, it's not going to become like a paste. It's really just to kind of make it a little more crumbly. It should be sticking on your hand a little bit. It's still very like sand-like. It's not wet at all. Now, again, this recipe, this rub rather, is intense. It has very bold flavor. So you don't want to rub too much on it. I'm going to start by just putting, like I said, if you don't have mustard at home, and you can use any kind of mustard, it doesn't need to be a certain type. I just really think that mustard goes very well with gamey meat. So you're going to first put the mustard on. Now I just rub the whole thing in so that it's totally coating the piece of meat. Nothing crazy, just so that it's coated. And then I take this, and instead of dipping it in it like you would do with a chicken cutlet, I rather just rub it on top, because if you dip it in it like a chicken cutlet, I've found that it's too much. It's just way too thick. It's way too much flavor. You don't even taste the meat, because all you're tasting is the rub. So you're basically, my lighting in here is terrible, I'm sorry. You're basically just rubbing it on, you know, just coating it lightly. You don't want to go crazy with it. And that's literally it. You don't even have to oil the plate. I put it in a baking dish. You do not have to butter it. You do not have to put oil in it. You don't have to do anything to it. It's going to just cook like that. Now, with this size cut, because it's thicker, it's a little thicker than your backstrap is going to be, because it's just a cut from the rear quarter. I'm going to bake this at 375 for about 20 minutes. The rule of thumb with, if anybody is not sure how to cook, you know, for rare or medium or whatever you would want, the rule of thumb is to use your hand. So it's the same thing you would do for a steak. Anything that you want really rare, you're going to go further out on your hand. So the further out you go, and that's like what you touch, it's going to be more rare. And the more you go in, obviously, the more cooked it's going to be. So again, everything with cooking venison is very, very similar to cooking a steak. If you know how to cook a steak, you can cook venison. It's just basically trial and error with the cuts. That's the most important thing, is learning the different cuts. So that's why I used what I call a London broil. I'm not sure what your butcher would label it as. It's probably something very similar, but anything that would be a steak cut, you can use for this. And again, like I said, if you cut it open and it doesn't have silver skin or a ton of fat in it, silver skin is the stuff that it's not fat. You can tell it's not fat, but it doesn't come off easily, and it's very tough. You would never be able to actually eat it, which a lot of roasts have. So I would love to do another demo when we do a roast. So it's all slow cooked food. But so I'm just gonna stick this in the oven for like I said, 15 to 20 minutes, because it's a thicker cut. And then I always let my meat sit for about definitely 10 minutes afterwards. So I previously cooked one, and I wanted to show you guys. Like I said, I always let it sit for 10 minutes. Even with a regular steak, you have to let it sit. The difference is, I hope you guys can see it. the reason that you let it sit for 10 minutes is because you have to let the blood rest. The meat has to rest. The reason for this is because everything will be evenly distributed. When you cut a piece of meat too soon, all of the blood is in one area. And it's not going to taste the same. It doesn't look right. It just comes out so much better and so much more tender when you let the juices just completely sit in all of the meat. And a little tip, I always, whatever way the meat was sitting when it was in the pan. So let's say it's on this side when I take it out of the pan, right? When I put it on the cutting board to rest, I flip it onto the opposite side because it's been sitting on the other side for however long it's been cooking. And now I want to flip it on the other side. But I don't know if you guys can see, but it's the same. I like mine very rare. It's the same color consistently. And that's what you want. You want it to be consistent color. I normally always serve my venison with cauliflower mashed potatoes. That's my favorite thing. Very healthy dish. It really is it's very lean meat. And then, you know, what's better than cauliflower mashed potatoes? So that's basically it. Like I said, it's a very, very simple dish. I have much more complicated ones or even easy ones with roasts. So I would love to one day show you guys the roast, but that's it. It takes, what was that? 5 minutes. It's very quick. It's delicious. It's one of the best meals that you'll ever have. It's restaurant quality food. Back to you, Julia.
I'm starving. I'm starving after watching you do this. I'm gonna go home and have venison. No, it's true, you know, especially if you get the Shelter Island venison, it's free range. There's no antibiotics in it. It's totally organic. It's also, from a fitness perspective, it's a lean protein, right? It's really lean. It's, in some cases, it's almost better than eating cow. So can I ask you a question? I was thinking about, sometimes I've talked to people who have said to me, oh, you know, I've tried venison, but it tasted terrible, or it tastes too gamey. Can you give any tips about how to maybe change that person's perspective or enhance their experience or anything like that you can add to that? Or
Sure. So I was once that person. I didn't always hunt. I only started hunting 4 years ago, and before that my husband hunted, so we always had venison, and I love to cook. So, and I love, you know, living off the land. I'm all about it. So if he was bringing meat home, I was going to figure out how to cook it. So I started Googling recipes, and honestly, the recipes that I was Googling, I wasn't really a big fan of. It wasn't until I realized that lamb was gamey. So I put that together. I always cooked lamb, never cooked venison. But once I ate venison, I realized that it had that slight gamey taste to it. So I started applying all of my recipes for the lamb to the venison. And that was just like, that hit it out of the ballpark for me. I just kept going with that. And trial and error is the biggest thing that you're going to do with venison. You know, I mean, especially because it's free. I mean, it's less of a hit than trying to cook a piece of filet mignon that you're buying at the grocery store for an extraordinary amount of money. So my best advice is, if you are unsure of the cut, reach out to one of us. Even just take a picture of it. I pulled this out of my freezer before. So this is clear as day. This is a rump roast. Like, this is a roast. You cannot make a steak out of this. It resembles a football.
right.
Do not ever try to eat this unless it's slow cooked. There are certain parts of a deer that you just can't. It has the silver skin in it, like I was explaining. If you try to eat that as a steak, it's going to be terrible, and it's going to ruin your experience for eating venison. You really, the biggest thing is making sure that you're cooking the cut correctly. If you're, like I said, if you're not sure, reach out to one of us, reach out to Julia, anybody I'm sure in the, that butchers at Shelter Island will be able to tell you, or any butcher really, just so you can get an idea. What is this comparable to a cow? You know, like, what cut would this be at a grocery store? And then just go from there. That's what I did. I started Googling, what is this cut of a venison, of a deer, similar to on a cow? And then I was able to figure out, do I put it in chopped meat? You know, because I grind my own meat. So I can make it into chopped meat, or I can put it, you know, as a stew, or make it, you know, shred it and make quesadillas. So that's really the biggest thing is trial and error and knowing what piece of meat you have.
And you said for people, if they're going to cook it, the best way to cook it is like medium rare or more on the rare side?
Yeah, I kind of cut myself off. If you're not sure if it is it's a steak for sure, and you're not sure if it's cooked all the way or not, you're better off pulling it out too soon, letting it sit, cutting it down the middle and saying, whoa, that's way too rare for me, and sticking it back in. If you overcook it and that's done. So it's like the backstrap and the loins are filet mignon. So, you know, if you would eat filet mignon medium rare, you're going to want to eat this medium rare.
Wow. That's great. Does anyone else who's here on the call have any questions for Marissa? This is your chance to ask her
Yes.
anything.
Well,
hey,
actually, this
Marissa.
is, oh,
Go
No,
ahead.
go ahead, please.
this is more to Julia.
Yeah.
So at the town in the freezer, I find that there's stew meat, there's occasionally loins,
Mhm.
and then there's roasts.
Right.
So my problem is knowing whether that roast is going to have a bone or not, or indeed it's a roast or one of these pieces of meat that could be applied to being a steak. So is there any way that the butcher who's doing it could attach like a sheet to the front of the freezer that just says what they really are? What are,
Well, the cuts that are in the freezer are labeled, and actually we have Bo Payne is on the call, so he can add a little bit to it, but the butcher actually labels them, so you'll know
Yes.
what cut it is.
no, I know, but,
There's probably never any bone in it.
okay,
No,
but it's
there's no
just,
bone in the
Yeah.
cuts that we get out of the town center.
Okay.
So did you want to
Oh.
add anything about that, or?
Yeah, so we, in the interest of trying to standardize, because everybody calls everything something a little bit different, we tried to get away from, you know, you call this a London broil, for example. Somebody else calls it, you know, a quarter brisket. There's all kinds of random names that people come up with things. So one of the things that we have to do in order to meet our obligations with the county is put a label on there. We have to call it something, right? So per our regulations, everything is categorized as either stew, steak, loin, or roast. So occasionally some of our butchers will say, okay, it's a roast, but it's a football roast as well, something like that. I can check and see if we can get a little more specific on that. Although, again, there's a lot of different names for a lot of different things. And to be honest with you, our butchers are not professionally trained butchers. So they're not always 100% sure of what a, you know, bottom round versus chuck round versus top round might be, you know. But we can certainly look into that. As Julia, I think, said, everything will always be boneless. There's no bone ever. If you have bone, I need to know about that. And second, we'll never have chopped meat. There'll never be ground meat in any way, shape, or form. So stew meat is as close as you're going to get to chopped meat with us. And that's basically everything that doesn't fit squarely into a category of one of the other ones gets turned into stew meat.
thank you.
I think somebody else had a question.
Hey, Marissa, it's Doug Sherrod. I was hoping you would repeat the weight of this cut that you're cooking, the temperature you recommend, and the cooking time, please.
Sure. So this one in particular, it was probably about originally, I cut it in half. So by the time I cut it in half, it was less than a pound, maybe, you know, a half a pound of meat. and I cooked it at 375 for 20 minutes, and it came out perfect for me. It came out rare. Like I said, it's similar to cooking just a regular steak, so I like it rare. But it all goes back to trial and error, because you're not getting it from a grocery store where it's labeled how many pounds it is. So the best thing to do is to cook it, at 15 or 20 minutes. And then if it's thick, if it's a very thin piece of meat, obviously you're not going to cook it that long. But anything that's bigger than an inch or an inch and a half, you're going to want to cook it at least 15 minutes, and then take it out, see if, what it feels like. And if it feels like very, very mushy, like it's spongy almost, then it's too rare and you have to put it back in. You want it to have a little give, but not to the point that it feels like the mushy part of your palm. And then again, like I said, you'll learn from experience. It's the same thing with cooking a steak. I mean, you're cooking it the way that you would cook a steak. But as far as, I never know what poundage I'm cooking it at. So it's all judgment. And you had another question other than that?
Well, I do. When you're cooking slow, do you favor like a crock pot, or do you use a big pot of some sort for a chili or a stew and do it?
I use both. Actually, over the last year, especially this past season, I harvest and break down my own deer. So I chose to put it all into chopped meat. If you have a KitchenAid and you're really interested in really living off of this venison, you can do so much with it if you can make chopped meat. So I have an attachment for my KitchenAid, and I take all of my stew meat and I chop it, and I make chopped meat out of it. And then when I go to the store and I buy pork, I cut the fat off of the pork loin and I mix it into it. You only need to do that, by the way, if you're making something that's just straight meat, like if you're making burgers or meatballs. But otherwise, your chopped meat does not need to be mixed with fat necessarily. I never mix it with fat otherwise, and I make all kinds of things. But again, going back to like if you're roasting it and you're shredding it, I typically use a crock pot, but you can also use a oh my God, I forgot the name, the cast iron one on the stovetop. Dutch oven.
Cooker? Oh, Dutch
Le
oven.
Creuset.
If you're trying to cook a meal like quickly within 2 hours opposed to 8, you can do it in a Dutch oven on the stovetop, and then you put it in the oven.
Right.
So I'm hoping to be able to show you guys different recipes that show those examples, because I've made enchiladas, I've made quesadillas, and these are very simple meals. You're basically putting ingredients into a pot, letting it cook itself, and then you're assembling it. And it's so easy, and it is the best food I've ever had in my life. So yeah, mostly I actually use the Dutch oven more than I use the crock pot.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else have a question for Marissa?
I can, I gave some of the stew meat to my son, and what he did, he bought the KitchenAid attachment, and he put it through the grinder with some bacon, make burgers.
Yes.
So it added some smoky flavor to the chopped meat now, the stew meat that's now become chopped meat. And you just form it into patties, and it cooks great on the grill.
Yeah. What's more important than the flavor that it's adding fat.
Correct.
So yeah, now he's taking a lean meat that had silver skin in it, and he's mixing it with a fatty pork, which is what you want if you're using it for burgers or meatballs. Which is, I use the pork, but you can totally use bacon. I make all of my chopped meat ahead of time, and then depending on what I pull it out of the freezer for, I'll end up mixing it with different ingredients like that to make a burger. But yeah, that's if you love bacon and you want to substitute the bacon for just pork fat from a loin, that you can absolutely do that.
Anyone else out there have a question about the recipe? So I had said I was gonna, I said I was gonna post Bo's email on a slide I had, but he actually beat us to it. He put it in the chat box. And do you guys, if you're all familiar with Zoom, there's a little chat box. So Bo put his town email in there. So again, if you have any questions about our venison donation program, you can reach out to him there. You can also get on that email list if you'd like to be alerted to when the freezer is filled. And I think someone else had a question. I heard somebody talking there. Somebody wanted to ask a question or?
I'll add something. I mean,
Okay.
somebody mentioned football roast. I found sous videing to be really good on a football roast because it's very tough. So cooking it at about 8 to 10 hours on a 135, and then just a quick sear on the grill is really good.
Yeah. That's definitely a good option as well.
Keeps it very tender.
Yeah. The football roast is what I showed you guys. So this, it's very, very round. I mean, it's very distinctive that it's a football. I mean, there's no doubt about it. When you look at it, it's very round. And that's the football roast that we're referring to. So if you go to the freezer and you see this, you cannot use this for anything except slow cooking. And obviously they're going to be in all different sizes too. I mean, depending on what size deer it was harvested from, it might be smaller than this or larger than this. So as long as it looks like a football, that's what it is. I have a question. So I would love to know what kind of meals everybody would like to cook from. I know roasts are a big thing, and I have so many things I do roast with other than slow cooking. Aside from the chopped meat, because I know everybody doesn't have access to have chopped meat, but there are a lot of things that I do with stew meat other than eating stew. I'm not really a big fan of stew, so I don't really ever make stew. I do other things with it. I slow cook it and I turn it into something else. So I would love to know, if everybody's interested in me doing another one with like shredded venison that you slow cooked, and that what we could do with the shredded meat.
Well, I'm partial, but I have attempted to make tacos, but I would love to learn like maybe enchilada or something shredded, definitely.
Yeah. And you use the same recipe basically. I mean, every time you slow cook it and shred it, it's like a spin on either if you're doing something Mexican with it, you would obviously put cumin into it, or if you're doing tacos, you would put barbecue sauce, but it's all very easy. And I'm just so excited to show other people, what you can do with venison, because there are so many things you can do with it. And a lot of people don't realize it. I was one of those people a few years ago. So
anyone else want to offer like what you might like to try cooking in the future? Don't be shy now. You can ask us.
I ran into somebody at the meat freezer, and he said he makes bolognese sauce.
Hold.
Yay.
Bolognese, yeah.
I have some in my freezer. So that's one of my favorite things to slow cook. I use the chopped meat that I make, and I make bolognese sauce out of it, and then I freeze it into the canning jars, and you don't even taste that it's venison. I mean, honestly, if you had company over, you wouldn't even have to tell them that there's venison in it. They would never know. It's literally,
Unless they find out, then they get mad.
exactly. I mean, I always tell people before they eat it because I feel obligated, but honestly, I've had people come over that are so against eating venison for their own reasons, and they'll eat my dishes because they know that it doesn't taste like venison. So.
Okay, someone asked Marissa that they would love, it's Valerie Duffy said, we'd love to see a slow cooked recipe. I have what I think is a shoulder cut in my freezer, right? So that's what I do with shoulder too. Like,
yeah, that's perfect for it. I mean,
yeah.
any kind of cut like that you don't know what else to do with it. If all else fails, just slow cook it. You cannot go wrong with slow cooking it. And there's a lot of amazing recipes that you can substitute the venison for. So, like I mentioned, the enchiladas, the quesadillas are so easy. You literally just put the shredded meat on a tortilla that's in a pan, and then you put the meat on there, cheese, and another tortilla, you flip it once and it's done. So, and you're not cooking the meat technically, the slow cooker's doing it. So it's so easy and delicious. And that one has onions in it, that recipe that I use, so it's very good.
So I'll have to see, like, if I get enough response from people, if they'd like to have a second call, this could be something that we do maybe like once or twice a year, and we try a different recipe. Somebody
Yeah.
also asked, so we are getting a lot of comments in the box about slow cook recipes. It looks like is a win. And the other thing is, someone asked if we can put this on a Facebook page. Yeah, so the Deer and Tick subcommittee on education is looking into, like I said in the beginning of the talk, just looking at more creative contemporary ways. And one thing is we're considering is running a Facebook page. We started a survey. If you guys from Shelter Island, you know, you got our updated survey. We're trying to gauge interest on that. So that would be something that we could periodically put another recipe on, and maybe share a link to you doing another cooking, or we can invite other chefs too to, you know, offer something. So definitely. So to answer that person's question, Joe, thank you. Yes, definitely. And someone asked, I don't hunt, but a friend gave me ribs. How do I prepare them without killing them? Liz.
So the thing with ribs is it depends on who cut them for you. If it was a butcher, then you can do a lot with them. If somebody gave you ribs that were not cut down with a stainless steel saw, then you're probably going to have to smoke them in a smoker because they're pretty large. But if they were cut down, you're going to just look up any recipe that you would cook any other ribs with. You do not have to do anything special for venison. The ribs on venison are a little less meaty than you would get from pork. So you might want to cut some time down, but otherwise, like as far as a recipe goes, you can just look up a recipe or use your favorite rub that you normally would and recipe that you would use for any other kind of ribs.
Do you have to cook them differently? Like, would you cook less or more? I'm just thinking back to her question. She might have asked about like time and so forth.
Well, you definitely have to slow cook them. I would cook them with a slow cooker recipe, but as far as anything else, it's very similar to pork ribs. It's hard though. Ribs are hard.
Let me see if anyone else has anything in the chat. Anybody else have a question verbally, or you can put it in the chat box.
Oh, I actually have something.
Okay.
Since we were talking about like burgers and stuff, I know my godfather makes like these really good like breakfast patties, like sausage patties out of venison. But I try to eat a little healthier than that, and his are like really oily, but they taste so good. They're like fried and stuff. But I don't know if you have any of those like kind of more breakfasty.
I personally do not make sausage out of my venison, something that I want to do, but there's like a whole machine and everything that
These
for
are
me-
like patties though.
Well,
Yeah.
again, it goes back to if you want to dabble in that and you have the access to the chopped meat venison, you can just look up any kind of similar recipe for pork or beef, and you can substitute the venison. You don't need to do anything special in those kind of circumstances. It's if you know what cut of meat you're working with and you're working with the right one, then it's very comparable to cow. I mean, in all aspects.
Good. Does that answer your question, Lauren? Hopefully that's good.
Oh yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Anybody else want to ask anything? You're all hungry now, right? All right, guys. Well, right now it's about 7:45. The call was recorded, so I'm going to save the recording and I will get you guys all a copy of it so you can listen to it again at your leisure. And I just want to thank Marissa for giving us her time and experience. And it was really a privilege to have you. And I learned something myself. I'm always interested in trying new ways of cooking. So, and hopefully this will be the first of many calls that we have like this. Thank you, everybody, for participating. If you didn't get the ingredients list, email me at my town email. And what I'll do is I'll just share my screen here quick. So here is the Deer Tick Committee webpage. So you just go to Shelter Island Town US and you can see Deer and Tick. Here's all our board members, myself and the others right here. And there's a lot of material there about tick prevention, like, you know, just being leery of that when you're out and about our hunting program and much, much more. So you can go there, and our meetings. We have an upcoming meeting on April 7th, actually, if you're interested. So there you go. And again, I'll just put, let me put Bo Payne's, I'll share the screen again and just show you his. So there's Bo Payne's email, in case you missed it in the chat box. There's his town phone number and his email. So if you want to get on that email list to be alerted to when the freezer is stocked, that's a good idea to get on that list. All right, guys, thank you so much for coming on. All right, I'm going
Thanks,
to end the
Marissa.
call. So take care.
Thank you.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.